Warning, this podcast typically features spoilers and strong opinions. Proceed with caution. Hello and welcome to another episode of Two Grooms, One Plot, the podcast where two lifelong storytellers who are married talk about stories. I'm Pavi Prochko, audiobook narrator, author, etc.
And I'm Colin Funk, childhood development expert and teaching artist.
And today we're going to be talking about episode 6 of Mary and George as part of our little mini-series on the series Mary and George.
Is this episode called The Queen is Dead?
The Queen is dead. Let's get into our synopsis.
So the Queen
is dead.
It's 3 years later?
Yeah, I think it's 3 years later. The very least, the last time I remember there being a date was 1617, and now it says 1620.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but certainly time has gone by.
Yes.
And we know this by several things.
Mostly because their hair is
Mostly because their hair is different. So George has like really long hair, and so does Charles.
But it starts off, the Queen dies,
is dead.
Charles is sad.
Charles is sad. And there's riots happening because of Raleigh. And they're
still
so
years later.
Yes, they're killing pigs and burning effigies, pig effigies of the king. King James Spain fucker is what they keep saying because they're mad about him appeasing.
They don't like Spain while the king likes Spain.
Yeah. So everyone's hair is different. Charles is pissed because they're like sitting on their hands trying to bury the queen because they don't have money.
They don't have money. They don't have the money to bury her.
Mm-hmm.
But Charles is like, she's dead, and she was the queen, and why do people not care? Yeah. Why does the king not care? Why does my dad not care about?
Yeah. Mary shows up also to pay her respects, presumably, but kind of to like
clearly
to talk to George
because they have fallen out. And they are not.
They have not been talking. And George tells her, "You're not even on the battlefield anymore."
Ooh. Then we see Miss Brooks, her lover, follow Francis Bacon for some reason. I'm not really sure why, because she doesn't trust him. Whatever, it doesn't matter.
Following him, yeah.
And as she follows him, she gets walloped in the face.
Oh my God.
And taken to jail.
Oh yeah.
And we find out that she's going to get tried for the murder that Mary has done. Mary and her have done episodes earlier.
Yes.
That we've known that Bacon has known about.
Yes, Bacon has known about it. Yes. So that becomes kind of Mary's mission, where she's like, I'm going to get Brooks out of here.
But she has no recourse. She goes to Edward Coke and is like, please let her out. And Edward Coke's like,
I'm mad about my daughter.
Because at the same time, George convinces King James to open Parliament up.
Yes.
Because they need money. And they do that by bringing in the dead body.
They bring in, so he kind of like leverages Charles.
Yes, he charms Charles. Like he's like getting buddy with Charles.
Yeah, buddy with Charles because, the king's old and he's going to die at some point. But they're like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to inspire him to do things by bringing the queen's corpse, which is now like rotting.
They bring it into King James' bed. And they have a little moment, and King James is like, fine, we'll open Parliament so we have the money.
Yeah, because they need to raise the taxes so they have the money to do the whole thing.
So King James goes to Parliament, is like, I'm opening you guys up, but like, don't try to start a war with Spain. And then they have this like, this little meeting where it's not a Parliament meeting, it's a meeting where they're like, we're trying to consult for the king.
Right.
And they're like, okay, but just so you know, we are absolutely talking about starting a war with Spain, also looking into the corruption within the royalty. Yeah. That means looking into George, as well as all the other people that may have been taking advantage of their positions to be getting richer. George and Kit, George's brother specifically, like
they've been like really
Bacon as well,
stuff and Bacon.
They've all been kind of taking advantage of these positions, and the country is poor because of it.
Yeah.
So they do that, And so like Edward Koch is like feeling real powerful. He's like, I'm mad at Mary and her family. Hate that Frances is in this terrible relationship, forcing her to sleep with other people.
Yeah.
But also like hate that the king is like letting all this corruption happening.
Right. And
really
he's
just
like,
pissed about
and he kind of
all
has a little bit of a shift too, because like until now he's a little bit mealy-mouthed, as some of the other characters have been.
Especially against the women, like especially against his wife, especially against Mary.
But this feels a much more natural adjustment than what we talked about last episode with the daughter, Mary's daughter, kind of having a shift. This is Koch having a bit of a shift, but it really feels like it matches up more, because he is real feisty.
Yes. So, well, and in that, like, he decides to really go after George.
Yes.
And so he's like, he goes to Kit's house. Kit, like, is doing some weird thing in front of the mirror. And they're, like, coming to investigate him. Kit goes to George and is like, they're coming for us. And so they peace, and Koch comes and speaks to George's wife. And very interesting. We see like her like totally support him, and is like, and she's like, these are all gifts here. This isn't corruption.
Yeah.
And Koch sees right through it, but like,
what can he do?
She's not budging.
Right.
And like she tries to seduce him.
Yeah.
And it's like maybe it's gonna work. And then it doesn't quite.
It's just like a little bit too far too.
But George and Kit realize they have to go to Mary for a solution.
Uh-oh.
And you know, Mary's desperate to get Miss Brooks out of jail.
She's just been like perched waiting for an opportunity too, because she's like out of options.
And she comes up with
comes up with this plan. She's like, you have to kneel.
Yes, like, there's a little power struggle.
A little power thing that happens.
So we're back to like some like good, we're getting some good one-on-one interactions.
Yeah.
Some good like I'm like Mary against Edward, Mary against Kit and George. Like we're having some like really good like interactions. There's so much happens in this episode.
A lot happens in this episode, yeah.
And she tells, the plan is twofold. They go to Edward's and they're essentially like they're turning in Bacon.
Yeah. They're going to turn on Bacon. So they have to go to
Koch and beg.
And
be like, please take Bacon, but go to Diego to get proof.
Yeah.
And to get the proof, George convinces him that he can convince Charles to marry the Spanish princess.
Right.
So that they can unite England and Spain, which is what Diego wanted
the whole time.
And Bacon has not wanted that.
Yeah, Bacon did not want that, but just wanted to keep taking money from Spain.
Yes. So it's this trade, and it works out. Mary goes to Bacon, is like, guess what? Checkmate.
Yeah.
And he's like, probably not.
Yeah,
and
probably not, because
here are
there's
the
still
receipts.
here's the receipts. And he's also like, but there's like still a witness.
She's like, no,
because
there's not.
One of the two people,
because I have an unhinged son, who definitely killed him.
One of the two people who they poisoned didn't die, but now
Bacon really
for real
messed up and waited too long,
way too long to use that.
And Bacon's like, isn't that going to be suspicious knowing what I know about you? She's like, maybe, but like they're really going to care about your corruption, and they do not care about me. Not nearly as much.
No,
you're going to overshadow that for
Bacon.
sure.
So
and Koch does not like Bacon, so Koch is like ready to like
for sure. So
bring him down.
And then so it succeeds, and Brooks gets released,
and Bacon gets tried for everything. He's banished, and essentially George gets everything. From Bacon.
Right. George gets all of his stuff. He's like now living in this house, this enormous house. He has a daughter now.
Yes.
And
his wife gives birth to a daughter.
so like time is really moving, which is interesting too.
And then, but then Bacon shows up. And it's
in
like,
his garden.
do you mind if I like get a little revenge? I like really don't like what happens, and I just like want to make it a little bit easier to swallow.
Yeah.
And George is like, fine. And we find out that he has bribed some other jail person to get released at the same time that Miss Brooks gets released.
Right.
Because that's the whole point of what Mary's doing is to get Miss Brooks released. And so like as they're getting released, essentially this other person
is like, well,
kills.
I've been promised my own release if I kill you.
So she does.
So she does. She kills Brooks.
She kills Miss Brooks.
My favorite character, gone.
She's great.
I loved Brooks.
Sad.
Yeah, I know.
It was, I mean, like tragic. I mean, we watched
really
her the
sad.
whole time being like,
oh my God, maybe she'll do it. Yeah.
And it was very exciting watching her get released. I'm like, oh, maybe they'll run away. Maybe it'll be good. Maybe it'll turn out well.
And I'm like, it sure does not. And I cannot imagine what Mary's going to do now.
I don't know. She's going to get real.
It's going to be bad. I'm like really anticipating that.
So this episode, I do feel like this was like, let's pack some stuff in.
Yeah.
Let's pack some history.
Yeah,
let's
more
pack
than last
some
time.
events in here.
Mm-hmm. And how exciting those things are. Like how exciting like real history can be. You know?
Yes.
Not that we know every single backroom conversation, but it's just like, Bacon gets murdered and how that happens. And,
but they go ahead and like jump years because like we don't need to like slog through uninteresting years.
Yes. Right.
It's part of what we talked about with the last episode of like how economical they're being.
Yes. We only know the information that we need to know. We don't need to know anything else. If there's 3 years that happen or however many years happen between now and then and nothing important happens, fine. We don't need to see it. We don't need to like have sat there the whole time.
Even if there's one important thing or like little things that happen, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because we're not just like wasting time.
We're actually more interested
to cram something in.
Right. We're more interested in the stagnation. We get to see what that time has done by seeing how the Queen is rotting and how Charles is depressed and has been sitting there like every day. You know,
we've seen this from the first episode. Yeah. They've been like, they've kind of gone like in and out with their perception of time.
Yeah.
Where there's some times where it's like, oh, 2 days have happened and that's the episode. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's like many years have happened and it's the episode. But they are just telling the important parts of the story. Mm-hmm. And they are not keeping a consistent like time per episode.
Yeah.
Which I think that allows for a story to happen in a more succinct way.
Yeah. It's organic maybe. I don't know. It's like
Right. I mean, it's like you know, if you're writing a history book, you're not writing like day to day to day to day to day.
Right.
What happened each day, because that's not important. We can't. If we're trying to learn history, we can't learn what happened every day of history.
Right.
There's too many.
Yeah.
So we have to cherry pick.
Yeah.
So as humans, we do that. We have to take away
the extraneous things that don't fit.
That's what
the narrative.
Storytelling is.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's successful storytelling is subtractive. It's not additive.
It is.
We're not trying to add as much as possible.
Yeah. Relevance filters. It's all relevance filters.
Yeah. Because that is honestly, that's what we do when we're telling stories.
Yeah.
We are taking away unimportant things.
Mm-hmm.
We are not, if you're like trying to add as much as possible, that's not what storytelling is.
Yeah. That's so interesting because it's like your choice of like what you decide to take.
Sculpting.
Yeah, a little bit
out of just marble.
Out. Yeah.
You're not taking, it's not painting.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be telling a story like you're doing a painting where you're adding to a canvas until something emerges. You have a full block of marble.
You have to remove what's not the
take
sculpture.
away everything that's not it.
Yeah.
That's what storytelling is. Yeah. It's much more like storytelling. Like sculpting out of marble is much closer to storytelling than trying to like build from scratch.
Yeah. And that's so interesting as far as storytelling goes. What how different your story can be depending on what do you choose to keep, because that's all it is, right?
Yeah,
it's like
that's true.
you have the exact same canvas, the same block of rock, and you chisel a different thing, and it's a different. You chisel
different
elsewhere, and it becomes a different thing. Yeah.
And you could accidentally chisel off the wrong piece.
Mm-hmm,
you can keep a weird little lump there. And, there's so many things that could go right or go wrong or change it.
Yeah.
But I feel like good storytelling is chiseling away.
Yeah.
It is
as
not
much
adding.
as you possibly can.
Please.
Yes.
Please take away as much as
you can.
Which, we're looking. It's interesting. We're talking about that in an episode that I feel like so many events happen.
Yeah.
We're looking at so many different factions involved. We're looking at Parliament coming in, talking about a war with Spain, but also the corruption so we're looking
we're seeing a lot of these loose ends that have been set up early get resolved, or we're watching all of these little, the web.
Mm-hmm. We're finally seeing Charles Charles is coming in, and we're seeing what does that mean? We're King James himself is kind of fading into the background,
maybe
but he's
bleeding
still present.
And sick. I don't know.
We don't know. We're still getting those little puzzle pieces sprinkled in there.
Yeah, and it does not feel like too much, because there are a lot of shows that can. Where it's just there is so much happening. I felt like The Expanse was like that. We watched that first season, and I was like, there's a lot happening, and I don't know if I understand all of it.
Well,
Game of Thrones is like that too. We're going to keep comparing it to that, but it just
Game of Thrones is in my brain, it's the epitome of too much.
There's too much happening. Yeah.
We're doing too many things at once.
Yeah. And it's just if they had just had a little bit of an editor's eye, maybe they could have done it differently. Because
it's a TV show. It's not a novel.
It's not a novel. It can't be a novel.
It's not a multi-novel series.
Right.
That the books are 100 You're trying to cram it into an hour-long episode.
Yeah. And they do it so well. They really do it very well.
Yeah. Mary and George really keeping the actual story small while so many events are happening.
Right.
What is the actual story happening? They're keeping that very clear and concise.
Right.
I think so, at least.
I agree. Absolutely.
When I was taking notes for this episode, I'm there is so
many things happening.
But I don't think I really noticed how much it was happening. It didn't feel like I'm getting overwhelmed by the amount of things happening. It's just I looked at the notes and I'm there's about 3 times as much notes of actual events happening.
Yeah. And a lot of the other
episodes. Than the other episodes.
Yeah. Because there isn't a whole lot of sitting and having a conversation. A lot of the previous episodes have been George and James courting, and they're having deep conversation.
The long scene where we're watching the king in bed with the dead queen. I'm
that was weird.
It was weird.
There's the weird camera angle moment too, where it's pointing up.
They do lots of it's part of that style thing. I think in the first episode there was a lot more of that. It was pretty noticeable in that first episode.
Yeah.
Where we're oh, it's so artsy. I felt so artsy that first episode.
But they kind of stopped doing it. And now
I don't know if they did, or it's
maybe I'm just
it was
not noticing.
Really incorporated well. And there was a couple moments in this one that did kind of stand out.
Stuck out. Yeah. Stuck out. Stood out. I'm trying to say so many things. So in last episode, we had a lot of kind of the bad guys are closing in. We've got a lot of these forces of antagonism.
Yeah.
And then in this one, it's all of the plots are collapsing. It's just everything is coming, it's we have, everything is on shaky ground, and we're really not doing well. Everything we tried to do to fix it is now backfiring.
I really did think that this was the episode where this is a turning point.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's
it's going bad.
It's going down.
Yeah.
Ugh. But it ends up in a place where we get back to Mary, and she kind of solves the problem.
She solves the problem.
And of course it's more complicated than that.
Of course, yeah.
With the death of Miss Brooks specifically, that was it's like one of those, it feels like a Game of Thrones moment that feels very earned.
Yeah, felt really justified. And like, I'm like, oh my God, she's going to die, isn't she?
I was wondering if, like, when she was released at first, I wrote down Miss Brooks released, and in parentheses I wrote, or let out to be hung, question mark.
I thought that was what was going to happen too. I thought she was like, I thought we were going to see
was she actually just condemned? Did that piece of it, did she not actually get her influence
right
through?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
I thought that too.
And
but
then
it ended up being more.
They did it. And then when, like, of course, like, we heard Bacon ask about, like, oh, like, will you be offended if I take revenge, when talking to George?
Yeah.
And she said, and he said something like, when, like, the future queen, that was weird. He said something about the future queen.
Oh, he just called Mary queen. He was just like, Queen Mary. It was like the irony of it.
Like, I was like, are you suggesting that you think that she's going to push her way up to queen, or is it?
I think he's like, my impression was he was being like sardonic. He was being like sarcastic about it. Where he's like,
that's very possible.
Queen Mary.
He didn't say Queen Mary. He was
me.
like, he said, like, when our future queen comes into power. Like, he said something like that.
Maybe he was referring to the Princess of Spain.
But he doesn't. That's what I thought.
Weird.
He was talking about the Princess of Spain. I'm like, are you going to, like, hurt the Princess of Spain? That's weird.
Yeah.
And then
he just is recognizing Mary's outsized influence and wants to revenge her.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I like, but like the way he says it, I got a little bit confused. But like, in a way that I'm like, I don't think it's like storytelling confusing. I'm just like,
what was it? Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I don't love that actor generally, that the performer of Bacon. I just like didn't love that character. Okay. Really.
Oh, speaking of that actor,
the lesions were morphing, and they came up later.
They did come up.
They came up. They mentioned them specifically at the end where they were like, because he's like, "Can I hold the baby?"
I mentioned.
And she's like,
I was
"Absolutely
like,
not."
I was like, "Oh," while we were watching it, I was like, "Oh, they're getting bigger."
Yeah, they got bigger, and then it went away, and then it came back, and then his whole face.
I don't know if it went away, but it was like, it wasn't quite as big as it was. There was a scene where it's a little bit bigger.
Bigger, yeah.
But then it came back, and they addressed it.
They did address it. It's like, you think I'm going to give my baby to someone with
you're a slut.
With a pox or whatever it is? Yeah.
The pox shows that you've been.
Well, I know where you've been.
Anonymous gang.
Yeah. So I was very happy that paid off.
Yeah.
I've been doing well with those.
I don't mind him. I think he's good.
I didn't love him. But
I liked him. I liked his vibe.
Yeah, I think that sometimes like just the way he talks just like made the meaning behind what he was saying unclear, that's why I mentioned it. That I was like, I'm a little confused about what you're saying, and I don't know, a little poetic.
I don't know. Like, I think that's probably
Bacon, isn't he?
But I feel like maybe that was on purpose.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. I liked it.
Okay. I was gonna say too.
Is there anything else? I mean, like, so much happened in this one.
Unraveling. Oh, and like, Mary comes back in her own. We mentioned that too. How crazy that, like, just sidebar, politically speaking, they kept Parliament closed for 6 years.
They brought that up, and I was shocked.
What is Parliament for?
It is very confusing.
The divine right of kings, right? I'm like, geez, like things are way different.
But like that, just keeping it closed is an easy option.
Yeah.
But like checking it while it's open is not that easy.
Not that easy.
I'm a little bit confused.
Which is a little confusing, right?
But like, of course, like politics is always that confusing.
Yeah. It's like once you open it, it's the way it is, I guess. I don't know. It's weird.
I don't know.
Magna Carta, blah, 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 blah. But I thought that was that was weird and very interesting.
It's like, I don't understand because politics are complicated.
They're complicated just in already.
Life.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like actual history. So it's not like conveniently for a story. It's
right.
Like,
it's just like,
it's like actually like.
They could have just done that. And it was just like, what, norms just like kept them from behaving that way? Like,
I don't know.
I have no idea.
But he had to give them a certain amount of power.
Right. So the king can't levy the taxes. The parliament has to levy the taxes.
Confused.
Very confused. But interesting.
It
I would
is
love to learn more about that.
Is that your? Speaking of which, should we get into our?
Yeah, let's do some superlatives, huh? Oscar moment.
I really loved when Mary went up against Coke. And they have this really great back and forth. And finally, Coke is like you said, like finally has some backbone in this episode.
Yeah.
Like he is just mad about everything. And he's got a cross to bear. He's like ready to like fight.
And he's got the power to do it. He's got the support. He's got the ability. He's a lawyer. So
he's essentially being like, absolutely not to marry everything. Like you don't have any leverage against me.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like,
beg.
He wants her to beg. And when she does, when she's like, I'm begging now, when you see her like finally get there, I'm like, she's good.
She's so good. Julianne Moore is
so
and that both single tear. I'm
good.
like, how do you even do that? She can just like do that.
It's like that like instantaneous like red teary eyes. And I'm like, ooh, she's right there.
Yeah.
I mean, like the whole, like, I really do believe that she cares about this person.
Yeah.
That she cares about Miss Brooks.
Yeah.
That she like, I don't know. It was like, I think you were right. Like the episode before, there was a lot less like, like
acting moments. This one had a lot of them.
A couple really strong.
You see,
he's really like I like him, but like in this, I think Julianne Moore, like that moment, I was like, I think I wrote down in my notes. I was like, ooh, there's some acting.
Yeah, I wrote, Mary still got it. Because that was when she has the conversation with George. This is my Oscar moment. It's also Julianne Moore. It's the scene where she's with talking with Kit and George like doesn't want to do anything, and Kit's like, dude, just like kneel, it's fine. And George's like, no. It's like, well, what do you want? What do you care about? Miss Brooks. George is like, what do you want? Like Miss Brooks out of there? What do you care?
God.
And she says,
yes.
Doesn't look good on me if she's tried and hung. Like that line was so good.
Holy, she's so good in this episode.
Oh, and it's
like minuscule moments. It's perfection.
It's really good. And because it's like she says that because that's, of course, logically speaking, that doesn't look good on me. But she is like with all of her might saying like,
she's fully convicted into it.
And like both of them are like, love her and you're going to do this.
And they were both like,
it was a silencing moment. Yeah. They were just
you're
like,
right. Yep. That's correct. Yep. But she is so good.
Oh yeah.
I do want to give like a special mention to that scene where Rutledge. I wish I heard that person's first name.
Is it Rutledge or Rutland?
I thought it was Rutledge.
I don't know. We'll confirm next episode.
His wife, George's wife, pregnant wife. This scene where she's seducing him is seducing Edward Coke.
Yeah.
Both of them are so good in that scene.
Yeah.
That I was like, wow, you guys are really working for your money. Like both of them are so good. Like she is so...
I mean, she really takes control in that scene because it's like Coke comes in. He's like, is the master of the house here? And she just like enters in the big balcony. She's like, I am. And I was like, oh my gosh.
But then she literally like she takes off this necklace.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, a gift.
Are you trying to bribe me? No.
It was a gift.
It was a gift
from my
aunt.
From my aunt.
Yeah.
Gave me little trinkets like this.
And there are many. I have so many.
And like this, like she is so, that character's like so skilled.
Yeah.
In like knowing what the right thing to say is, even though it doesn't work out for her. I think she plays her hands absolutely perfectly.
Yeah. And it's just, we just see actually like Coke's conviction, like like he is the incorruptible, right?
Yes.
And the only thing,
which is why I thought that Miss Brooks was also going to get hung, because like they have that speech where he's like, "No, you guys are not going to get away with it." Essentially,
yeah. He's like, "It is not going to happen," and so like, yeah,
where she's like, this is the most natural thing in the world.
Yes.
Seducing him. And he's like, I disagree.
Yes.
But like very interesting moment because I was like,
what is happening?
I don't know.
It's like the only thing to corrupt him is just like he got a bigger fish, was just like he got his rival.
I mean, it's like any sort of legal situation.
Yeah. Get the bigger one. It's the bigger, more important one. Get that one.
You persecute the person that you have the most evidence against.
Yeah.
And you give the deal to the person who gives you that evidence.
Right.
It's just
how legal stuff works.
It's just like, it's yucky, but it's like, it is a very, very common tool that clearly, like, it makes sense that it would have worked then as they absolutely do that now.
Yeah. Yeah.
They absolutely will trade someone's freedom for information.
Yeah. And it's like, obviously, Bacon was like, had just like the lion's share of that, the benefit of like getting the bribes from Spain and everything. So it's like, it was like what George and Kit are doing is like peanuts, you know?
And on top of that, like had so much like less to lose.
Yeah.
They were like, yeah, it's either this or we lose everything. So
yeah,
it was just smart.
Yeah.
Just again, like goes like we're returning to Mary being a key player.
Yep. Oh, that's so refreshing.
It's very interesting. I mean, like that we like
I'm like
veer away from it.
Yeah.
And George and Kit, like they're all kind of like floundering. We see the king, like him trying to like talk to the king, and he's like talking about one thing with Charles and then another thing with Francis and another thing with the king, and they're all kind of like, he's like sort of talking the same, but like a little bit different with each of them. Like, oh, we should open up Parliament, and Mary's like, don't do that, and the king's like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So it's like he's a little bit confused,
right?
And like Mary kind of is.
I mean, she's been watching the
so
whole time.
smart.
She sees the whole thing, and she's like, I just don't have leverage, but I know exactly what to do.
Yes.
All I need is the power to do it. And George is in over his head
at this point, like, has written her off. She's like, burned too many bridges. Her biggest ally was the queen.
Mm-hmm. And the queen is dead now.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Womp womp.
But she's back.
She's back. Unearned moment.
Oh, that was Oscar moment.
That was Oscar moment. We went on for so long.
Unearned
moment.
Do you have?
You know, I do want to mention something in a minute, but it's a good thing. But unearned moment, I mean, I think I just have to give it to Bacon generally. I just didn't like his performance in the whole series. I'm just like not a fan of his, and kind of to see how that ends up, I just was a little about it.
Sure. That's fair.
Especially
I don't know.
Just the last moment
disagree,
in the garden. I just didn't love, I don't know. I felt like there should have been more transformation. I don't know.
No, I kind of like that he was like, I was just like, personally, I like that he was like, he like goes right into strategizing.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, you kind of care.
Yeah.
But I don't also, like, he's strategizing and then, I don't know, you're talking about his performance and not the actual story.
Right.
I get it. But I don't know. I like the way it was scripted. I liked it.
I like the character. I don't like the actor, I think. Sorry.
I don't know. I like that he was kind of soft spoken and not like that.
Yeah.
He's not like Coke, who's like, you know, he's not that thing.
No, yeah, of course.
He's kind of like, he's
genteel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't like him.
He's gay.
Yeah, a little bit.
Kind of, you know, like that's kind of like his.
Yeah, that was the thing.
He's not doing the masculine macho thing. That's not what he's doing.
He's in the same, you know, world as the king and all those other folks.
But like a big political player. I don't know. I find that very interesting that he's like, the way he's chosen to perform it is very soft.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if I have a problem with the softness. I just
don't like it. You don't like it.
I just
that's
like
fair.
it.
I get it. I think my unearned moment is when George tries to get to the king through the door. He's like, hey, why don't you imprison Coke? And like the king is on the other side with a nosebleed. He's like, no, God will decide for us now. And I'm like, what's happening? I don't quite understand what's going on.
Yeah.
Because like, why would he be so against it and like not willing to just be like, we should probably just like not have him do that thing, because I don't want him to do either of the things he said he's going to do.
Yeah. But then maybe that's a function of like Parliament or something. I don't know. But it's just like we opened Parliament and he's like, yeah, I told you what was going to happen when we opened Parliament and you did it. So now it's over.
Look, I get it. But like, it's not quite, I think to this, like, I feel confused about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, is it because he's like, are they still like trying to like tell us that he's going crazy? Is this like another piece of that?
Yeah.
It's a little confusing and a little bit like convenient storytelling. Trope-y.
Sure. Yeah, I buy that.
So I'm not quite convinced about that moment.
Yeah.
It could have easily been like, especially because like they've been having a weird, like it's like pretty clearly set up that George doesn't have full power over the king.
Right.
And it felt like a little bit like woo-woo.
Yeah.
Like,
something ethereal is happening, yeah.
God is now at play and the divine, like, I'm not sure what that is all about. And maybe, I assume it'll come to fruition. I'm just like, not
a fan of that.
It feels like such an easy solution that they like lobbed.
Yeah.
That was so easily just like struck down.
Yeah.
For like, well, it seems like an important reason, but like maybe like I don't know, there's a little bit, I don't know, it feels like something mystical is happening.
Yeah.
Kind of like, or this like they're just like building up a lot.
Sure.
And I'm not sure I quite care.
I got it.
Yeah.
Cool. I did want to mention one thing that I thought was actually was kind of a honorable mention as far as Oscar moment. The woman who kills Miss Brooks is the same woman who at the very beginning is the one who like creates the pig effigy and like at the riot. And so it's like we are to assume that she's like been arrested, because we get mentions like, yeah, some people have been hung, some people have been arrested for doing these riots and
I didn't even notice
these protests. And it turns out one of them is the one that's been hired to, or been
nice little
bribed
bookend.
To, yeah, a nice little bookend. And it was like I thought that was a really well done version, where in a previous episode it was like the people were like digging for like, it turns out it was like the heart of his old lover, and it's like turns out that's what they were digging for, and it was like a weird. I was like, that's what was going on. That's so strange. This was, I thought, really excellently done, because we see her as like the protagonist of like this cold open of the episode, and it's like, who is that? Why are we following this person? And it's just like, oh, it's just showing us a protest, and it has that purpose of like showing us that there's all these riots happening,
right?
And then she actually does become important at the end.
Right.
It feels very like Charles Dickens to me a little bit. And I really liked that.
Cool.
What are we excited about next? What are we anticipating?
There's so much. Again, you go first.
Maybe it goes without saying, but I'm like, what is the wrath that comes
I'm curious
from Mary now that Brooks is dead? And I was so excited to see whatever that performance is going to be. Oh, I want to know how badass she's going to be, and she's going to have all these like great lines. I'm excited about
very
that.
Very excited about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like I'm a little bit excited to see more about Charles and like this like pending deal with Spain, and
because they're gonna go to Madrid.
Oh, let's go to
Madrid.
Let's go looking for girls in Madrid.
Let's go look for girls in Madrid.
It's like a fun little. I'm excited to see them, like that relationship.
I wonder if they'll go to Madrid.
We just went to
Madrid, so we get to see what Madrid looks like.
I love Madrid.
But yeah, cool.
That's it. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Two Grooms, One Plot. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on the YouTube. Follow us on the social medias. Thank you to Chicago Podcast Studio. Thank you to Kaylee, our social media maven. And thank you to little Jim Jam, who's underneath my chair here, the little puppy. And I am Pavi Prochko. And remember, if you have a little lesion on your face, you get that looked at.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Colin Funk. And remember, even when you play all your cards right and you seduce the best you can, sometimes it just doesn't work. Yeah, sad.
Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode of Two Grooms, One Plot, a Pavitas Productions project, hosted by Colin Funk and Pavi Prochko. This podcast was produced by Chicago Podcast Studio. Our opening cartoon was created by Gloriu, and our theme song was composed by me, Pavi Prochko. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite listening platform. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at Two Grooms, One Plot for updates on new episodes and behind-the-scenes content. If you have any feedback, comments, concerns, or kudos, you can email us at twogroomsOneplot@gmail.com. Please rate and review us wherever you can. It would help us out a bunch. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time.